Kira stood at the edge of the cliff watching the three moons rise over the valley below. Her silver hair moved in the wind and her pointed ears caught every sound in the forest behind her. She was not alone. Her two dragons, Ash and Ember, lay beside her with their scales glowing softly in the moonlight. They were not just her companions, they were her family. Her bond with them ran deeper than blood, deeper than any connection she had known in her long life. The elves had always lived in harmony. With the ancient forests, their villages were hidden among the tallest trees connected by bridges made of living wood. They sang to the plants, and the plants grew stronger. They whispered to the streams, and the water ran clearer. For thousands of years, this was their way. This was their home. But everything changed when the humans arrived in their metal ships. Kira remembered the day the sky turned dark with their vessels. She had been gathering moonflowers near the sacred grove when the first ship descended. The noise was terrible, like thunder that would not stop. The trees bent away from the wind created by the engines. Animals scattered in every direction. Birds fell silent. Kira dropped her basket and ran back to her village, but she was too late. The human ships had already landed in the clearings. The soldiers poured out wearing armor that reflected no light. They carried weapons that hummed with strange energy. The elf elders tried to speak with them, tried to explain that this land was protected by ancient laws, but the humans did not listen. They planted flags, they set up camps, they began cutting down trees to make room for their buildings. Kira watched from the high branches as her people argued about what to do. Some wanted to fight others, wanted to flee deeper into the wilderness where humans could not follow. The council met for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, they made their decision. Most of the elves would leave. They would go to the old sanctuaries, in the northern mountains where the air was too thin for humans to breathe comfortably. But Kira could not leave. This forest was where she had been born. It was where her parents were buried. It was where she had found Ash and Ember when they were just eggs abandoned by their mother. She remembered that day 5 years ago. She had been running from raiders who had destroyed her village. Fire everywhere. Screams everywhere. She had hidden in a cave deep in the mountains. There in the darkness, she found 2 dragon eggs glowing with inner warmth. She stayed with those eggs for weeks, living on roots and mushrooms, keeping them warm with her own body heat, singing to them the old songs her mother had taught her. When they finally hatched, the baby dragons looked at her and knew her. They bonded with her in that moment. Their minds touched hers, and she understood what it meant to never be alone again. Ash was the larger of the 2. His scales were dark gray like smoke, and his eyes were gold. He was calm and thoughtful, always watching, always listening. Ember was smaller, but fiercer. Her scales shifted between red and orange like flames, and her eyes were bright green. She was quick to anger, quick to protect, always ready to fight. For those she loved, together the 3 of them had survived the wilderness. They had learned to hunt, to hide, to fight when necessary. Kira taught the dragons the ways of the elves, and the dragons taught her the ways of their kind. She learned to feel the wind the way they did, to sense heat and movement from far away, to understand the language of roars and growls that dragons used to communicate. Now as she watched the human ships land, she knew she could not abandon this place. She told the elders she would stay. She would watch the humans. She would learn their ways and perhaps find a way to make them leave. The elders were not happy, but they understood Kira had always been different, always been stubborn. They blessed her and warned her to be careful. Then they left, and Kira was alone with her dragons. For the first few weeks she stayed hidden. She watched the humans from the trees and from the high cliffs. She learned their routines. The soldiers patrolled at dawn and dusk, though engineers worked during the day building structures of metal and plastic. The scientists collected samples of plants and soil, always writing in their devices, always measuring everything. Kira noticed that the humans were not all the same. Some of them seemed uncomfortable with the destruction. They frowned when trees were cut down. They argued with their leaders. One human in particular caught her attention. His name was Daniel Carter. She learned this by listening to conversations from her hiding spots. Daniel was different from the other humans. He was older, maybe 40 cycles by human counting. His hair was brown with gray at the temples. His face had lines that spoke of sadness. He moved slowly, carefully, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. While other humans laughed and joked, Daniel was quiet. He spent his free time walking alone in the parts of the forest that had not yet been destroyed. Kira followed him many times. She watched as he touched the bark of ancient trees with something like reverence. She saw him plant seedlings when he thought no one was looking. Once she saw him argue with a commander about cutting down a grove of silver oaks. The commander ignored him and ordered the trees destroyed anyway. Daniel stood there for a long time afterward, just staring at the stumps one evening. Kira decided to get closer. She left Ash and Ember in a safe place and climbed down from her perch. She moved through the shadows, silent as moonlight. She got within 20 feet of the human camp. She could smell their food cooking, hear their voices clearly, see their faces in the firelight. Daniel sat alone away from the others. He was looking at something in his hands. It was a small rectangle that glowed with light. Kira had seen these before. The humans called them photos. They were images of people and places captured somehow in the device. The image Daniel was looking at showed a woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. Next to her was a younger version of Daniel. His arm was around her and he was smiling too. Really smiling. Not the sad half-smile he wore now. Kira understood then. Daniel had lost someone important, someone he loved. The sadness in his eyes was the same sadness she had carried since her village was destroyed. It was the sadness of surviving when others did not. It was the weight of memory and regret. She watched him for a long time until the fire died down and the other humans went to their tents. Daniel stayed sitting there, in the darkness, holding that glowing rectangle. Finally, he put it away and stood up. He looked directly at the shadows where Kira was hiding. "I know someone is there," he said quietly. "If you mean harm, you would have acted by now. If you are just curious, then I mean you no harm either." Kira froze. She had been so careful. How had he known she considered running, but something stopped her? Maybe it was the gentleness in his voice. Maybe it was the recognition of shared pain. Whatever it was, she made a choice. She stepped forward into the dying light of the fire. Daniel did not reach for a weapon. He did not call for help. He just stared at her with wide eyes, taking in her silver hair, her pointed ears, her strange clothing made of woven grass, and, "Spider Silk, you are one of the forest people," he whispered. Kira nodded slowly. "Yes, I am one of the elves." Daniel sat back down as if his legs would not hold him anymore. "An elf," he repeated. "I thought you were all gone." "Most are gone." Kira said, her voice soft. "I stayed to watch, to understand why you destroy what you do not own." Daniel looked down at his hands. "I do not want to destroy anything," he said. "I came here to escape my own destruction, but it seems I brought it with me." They sat in silence for a long moment, two broken souls from different worlds meeting in the ruins of something beautiful. Neither knew it yet, but this moment would change everything. The next evening, Kira returned to the human camp. Daniel was waiting in the same spot by the cold fire pit. He had brought food with him, simple rations from the human supplies. When he saw her emerge from the shadows, he smiled that sad smile and gestured to the space across from him. "I hoped you would come back," he said. Kira sat down, keeping a safe distance between them. Ash and Ember were nearby, hidden in the darkness, watching. She could feel their presence in her mind, their readiness to protect her if needed. Daniel noticed her glance toward the trees. "Are you alone?" he asked. "No," Kira replied. "My companions are near. They watch over me." Daniel nodded slowly. "Are they other elves?" Kira considered how to answer. Something about this human made her want to trust him. She reached out with her mind and called to Ash and Ember. There was a moment of hesitation. Then they emerged from the forest. Two massive dragons moving silently despite their size. Their scales caught the moonlight and their eyes glowed in the darkness. Daniel stood up quickly, his hand moving toward his belt but stopping before reaching any weapon. He stared at the dragons with a mixture of fear and wonder. "They are magnificent," he whispered. Ash and Ember approached cautiously. They positioned themselves on either side of Kira, their large heads level with hers. They studied Daniel with intelligent eyes, measuring him, judging him. After a long moment, Ember made a low, rumbling sound in her throat. It was not quite a growl, more like a question. "She wants to know if you are a threat." Kira translated. Daniel shook his head slowly. "I am not a threat to you or to them, I promise." Ash moved forward until his snout was inches from Daniel. The dragon sniffed deeply, taking in the human scent. Daniel stayed very still, barely breathing. Then Ash did something unexpected. He pressed his large head against Daniel's chest gently, almost like a cat seeking affection. Daniel raised a shaking hand and touched the dragon dark scales. "He accepts you," Kira said, surprised. "This is rare. Dragons do not trust easily, especially not humans." "Why?" Kira asked suddenly. "Why are you different from the others? Why do you care about this forest when your people only want to tear it down?" Daniel sat back down and Ash settled beside Kira. Ember remained standing alert. "I lost someone," he began, 3 years ago. "My wife Linda. She died in an accident back on Earth. After that, I could not stay in our home. Everything reminded me of her, so I volunteered. For this mission, I thought a new world, a new start might help me forget." "Did it help?" Kira asked. Daniel laughed bitterly. "No, it made things worse. Because here I am, watching us destroy something beautiful again, and I am powerless to stop it. Just like I was powerless to save Linda." Kira understood that feeling. She had felt it when her village burned, when her parents died, when the raiders left nothing but ashes and bodies. "I also lost my people," she said quietly. 5 years ago, raiders came to my village. We were a peaceful community. We had no weapons, no warriors. They killed everyone. They took what they wanted and burned the rest." Daniel looked at her with deep sympathy. "I am sorry. I ran." Kira continued. "I hid in the mountains. I wanted to die. But then I found Ash and Ember. They were just eggs. Their mother had been killed by the same raiders. I stayed with them. I kept them warm. When they hatched, they gave me a reason to keep living. They saved you." Daniel said. "And I saved them." Kira replied. "We saved each other. That is how bonds work. Real bonds, not the ones humans force with chains and cages." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "What happened to the raiders?" Ash and Ember grew quickly. Kira said, her voice hard. "When they were strong enough, we hunted the raiders. We found their camp in the southern valleys. We gave them the same mercy they gave my people." "None," Daniel guessed. "None," Kira confirmed. They sat in silence after that. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people who understood loss, who understood what it meant to survive when survival felt like punishment. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "The humans here, they plan to expand. The commanders want to clear more forest. They want to mine the mountains. They will not stop until they have taken everything." "I know," Kira said. "I have heard them talking. There is going to be conflict." Daniel said, "The commanders see the dragons as a threat. They want to capture them or kill them. They have weapons, specifically, designed to bring down large creatures. Let them try." Ember growled. Her voice was like grinding stone. Kira had not realized Daniel could hear it too, but he flinched at the sound. "Violence will not help," Kira said firmly. Looking at Ember, "If we kill humans, more will come. They will bring bigger weapons, bigger ships. They will turn this entire planet into a battlefield. Then what do we do?" Ember demanded. "We find another way," Kira said. Though she did not know what that way might be. Daniel leaned forward. "I might be able to help." He said, "I have friends in the science division. They are not like the military. They actually care about understanding this planet, not just exploiting it. If I could arrange a meeting between you and them, maybe we could convince the leadership to change their approach." "Why would you do this?" Kira asked. "You are human. This is your people." Daniel shook his head. My people are the ones who respect life, who try to build instead of destroy. Linda used to say that home is not a place, it is a choice. Every day you choose what kind of world you want to live in. I choose a world where forests like this one still exist, where creatures like Ash and Ember can fly. Free Kira studied him for a long moment. Then she made a decision. If you can arrange this meeting, I will come. But if it is a trap, if your commanders try to capture us, we will fight. And many humans will die. It will not be a trap. Daniel promised, I will make sure of it, over the next few days. Daniel worked carefully. He spoke to scientists he trusted. He planted ideas in conversations. He made it seem like studying the native life might be more valuable than destroying it. He found allies among the younger researchers who had come to this planet hoping to make discoveries, not wage war. Meanwhile, Kira spent her time teaching Ash and Ember restraint. It was difficult. Ember especially wanted to attack the human camp to drive them away before they could do more damage, but Kira insisted that they had to try. Peace first. Violence was easy. Survival was harder. She also began exploring the human settlement more boldly. Now that Daniel knew about her, she did not have to hide as carefully. She watched the humans work. She learned about their technology, their hierarchy, their fears. She realized that most of them were not evil. They were just following orders, trying to survive, trying to make a living in a universe that was harsh and unforgiving. One night, she found Daniel alone again. He was planting trees, small saplings he had grown from seeds. When he saw her, he smiled. I know it is not much, he said, but I want to give back something for what we have taken. Kira knelt beside him and helped him dig. The soil was soft and rich. Between them, they planted a dozen trees in silence. When they were done, they sat back and looked at their work. These will take years to grow, Daniel said. Maybe decades, then we should plant more. Kira replied. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since his wife died, he felt something like hope. Maybe you are right, he said. Maybe there is still time to make this right. Maybe Kira agreed. But we must move quickly. Your commanders will not wait forever. I have arranged the meeting, Daniel said. It will happen tomorrow night, in the science lab. Just you, me, and 3 researchers I trust. They want to learn about the bond between you and the dragons. They think it might be the key to understanding this planet. Ecology. Kira felt nervous, but determined. Tomorrow. Then she said, if this works, if we can convince your people to change their ways, then perhaps both our species can survive here. And if it does not work, Daniel asked, then we fight. Kira said simply, and we do not stop until the humans leave. Or we are dead, Daniel nodded. He understood that night as Kira disappeared back into the forest with her dragons. He made a silent promise. He would do everything in his power to make sure it did not come to war, because he had already lost one world to destruction. Would not lose another. The science lab was a simple structure made of white plastic and metal. It sat at the edge of the human settlement, away from the military barracks and command center. Daniel had chosen this location carefully. He wanted Kira to feel as safe as possible, given the circumstances. When she arrived just after sunset, with Ash and Ember following close behind, the 3 scientists waiting inside were visibly nervous. The lead scientist was a woman named Dr. Claire Rodriguez. She was in her 50s with gray hair tied back in a practical bun. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent but kind. She had spent 30 years studying alien ecosystems on a dozen different planets, and she had learned to respect what she did not understand. The other 2 scientists were younger. A man named Peter Walsh, who specialized in animal behavior, and a woman named Amy Chen, who studied plant communication networks. Kira entered the lab alone, at first leaving the dragons outside. The space was cramped and filled with equipment, screens showing data readouts and specimens in glass containers. The scientists stared at her with open fascination. It was one thing to see images of elves captured by drones. It was another to stand face to face with one. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward, slowly, her hands visible and empty. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this must be difficult for you. trusting humans after everything that has happened. Kira nodded once. Daniel says you are different from the soldiers that you seek to understand, not to conquer. That is our hope, Dr. Rodriguez replied. We are scientists, not warriors. We believe this planet has much to teach us if we are willing to listen. Then listen, Kira said. I will tell you what you need to know. But first, you must understand something. The bond between me and my dragons is not something that can be studied like a specimen in a jar. It is sacred. It is alive. It cannot be replicated in your laboratories. We understand, Peter Walsh said quickly. We are not trying to weaponize what you have. We just want to understand how it works, how you communicate with creatures that should be impossible to communicate with. Kira considered this, then gestured toward the door. Ash, Ember, come. The two dragons entered through the large doorway that had been left open for them. They had to crouch to fit inside, but they managed. The scientists backed away instinctively. Even though they had seen the dragons from a distance, being this close to such powerful creatures made their primal instincts. Scream danger, do not be afraid, Kira said. They will not harm you unless you threaten me. Dr. Rodriguez gathered her courage and approached Ash slowly. May I? She asked. Gesturing toward the dragon, Ash lowered his head and allowed the scientist to touch his scales. Dr. Rodriguez ran her fingers over them, marveling at their texture and strength. They are warm, she said. Warmer than I expected. Dragons are fire-made flesh. Kira explained. They generate heat internally. They do not just breathe fire, they are fire contained in living form. This is why they bond with those who have survived their own fires, their own destruction. Amy Chen, who had been silent until now, spoke up. You said the bond is sacred. Can you explain what you mean? Kira sat down on the floor cross-legged. The dragons settled on either side of her, and the scientists carefully found seats on lab stools. When a dragon chooses a companion, it is not a casual thing. Kira began. It is a merging of souls. The dragon shares its strength, its longevity, its connection to the primal forces of nature. In return, the companion shares their wisdom, their purpose, their reason for living. So it is symbiotic. Peter Walsh said, it is more than that. Kira replied, I do not just command Ash and Ember. I feel what they feel. When Ash is hungry, I know it. When Ember is angry, I feel it in my own chest. We are three separate beings, but we are also one. Dr. Rodriguez pulled out a small device and began taking notes. May I ask how you communicate? Do you use some form of telepathy? Yes and no. Kira said, it is not words exactly. It is feeling an image. When I need them, I do not call out loud. I simply think of them, and they know. When they need me, they send me sensations. A pull in my mind. A warmth or a coldness, an urgency. Can you demonstrate? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Kira closed her eyes and reached out to Ember. She sent the dragon an image of the forest outside the lab of a particular tree, with red leaves that grew near a stream. She asked Ember to go to that tree and bring back a branch. Without a word spoken, Ember stood and left the lab. The scientists watched in amazement. She will return soon, Kira said. They waited in silence for perhaps 5 minutes. Then Ember came back through the door, carrying a branch with red leaves in her jaws. She dropped it at Dr. Rodriguez's feet and settled back beside Kira. Incredible, Amy Chen whispered. How far can you communicate? I do not know the exact distance, Kira admitted. Many miles, certainly. Perhaps. There is no limit. I have never tested it. Daniel, who had been standing quietly in the corner, spoke up. Tell them about the forest. Tell them what you told me about how elves understand the land. Kira nodded. The elves have lived here for thousands of years. We have learned to listen to the world around us. Plants communicate through their roots, through chemicals in the air, through the fungi that connect them underground. When a tree is sick, the other trees around it send nutrients through these connections to help it heal. When danger comes, a warning spreads through the entire forest. So the forest is like one giant organism, Peter Walsh said. In a way, yes, Kira replied. And when your people cut down trees, they do not just kill one plant. They damage the entire network. It is like cutting nerves in a body. The forest feels pain. Dr. Rodriguez looked troubled. We did not know. We thought they were just plants. Just plants. Kira repeated, her voice hardening. Everything is alive. Everything is connected. This is what humans do not understand. You see the world as separate pieces, things to be used and discarded, but it is all one system. Break enough pieces, and the whole thing collapses. There was a heavy silence in the lab. The scientists exchanged glances. They had come to this planet with good intentions, wanting to learn and discover, but they had been part of a system that valued profit over understanding, that saw nature as a resource rather than a teacher. What can we do? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Finally, how can we make this right? First, stop the destruction. Kira said. No more cutting trees, no more mining, no more expansion. Second, learn to live with this planet instead of on it. Learn from the elves who remain. Learn from the forest itself. Third, and this is most important, convince your leaders that this world is worth more alive than dead. That will not be easy. Daniel said. The military commanders, they only understand force and profit. Then we must speak in terms they understand. Dr. Rodriguez said, what if we could prove that the forest has value? Scientific value, economic value. What if we could show them that cooperation with the native species would be more profitable than destruction? How would you do that? Kira asked skeptically. Dr. Rodriguez stood and began pacing. The bond you share with Ash and Ember. It could revolutionize how humans interact with animals. If we could learn the principles behind it even partially, we could solve problems back on Earth. We have been trying to save endangered species for centuries with limited success. But if we could truly communicate with them, truly understand their needs, we could do so much more. You want to use our bond as a bargaining chip. Kira said, I want to use it as proof that cooperation works better than domination. Dr. Rodriguez corrected, that there is more to gain from working with nature than against it. The military thinks dragons are threats. But what if they are allies? What if other creatures on this planet could bond with humans the way Ash and Ember bonded with you? Ember growled low in her throat. Not all humans deserve such bonds, she said through Kira. We choose carefully. Most of your kind would use us as weapons. You are right, Ember, Kira said softly. But not all humans are the same. Daniel has proven that Dr. Rodriguez and her colleagues, they listen, they try to understand. Perhaps there are more like them. Dr. Rodriguez looked at Kira with sudden intensity. If you would be willing to work with us to teach us, we could build a case for changing how this colony operates. We could go over the commanders' heads directly to Earth government, show them what is possible here, and if Earth government does not care, Kira asked, then we will have tried, Daniel said, and we will know where we stand. At least then the choice will be clear. Fight or flee, Kira looked at her dragons. Both of them were watching her, waiting for her decision. She thought about her people scattered in the northern mountains. She thought about the forest dying piece by piece. She thought about the future and what it might hold. Finally she spoke. I will help you, she said. But I will not teach just anyone. Only those who prove themselves worthy. Only those who respect what they are learning. It is fair. Dr. Rodriguez said, we will start small, with just our team. We will document everything. We will build the strongest case possible, and we will fight for this planet in our own way, with words instead of claws, Ember said doubtfully. Sometimes, words are more powerful than claws, Kira replied, looking at Daniel. Who would have thought that a conversation by a dying fire could lead to this? Who indeed, Daniel smiled. And this is just the beginning. 3 weeks passed, and the work between Kira and the scientists progressed faster than anyone expected. Dr. Rodriguez and her team documented everything. They recorded the way Kira communicated with Ash and Ember. They measured the biological changes that occurred when the bond was active. They studied the neural patterns, the chemical signals, The electromagnetic fields that seemed to pulse between dragon and elf. Peter Walsh spent days observing how Ash and Ember interacted with the forest. They watched the dragons carefully select which prey to hunt, never taking more than needed. They saw how the dragons would sometimes burn small patches of undergrowth in controlled ways that actually helped new plants grow. It was ecological management. On an instinctive level, Amy Chen focused on the network of life in the forest. With Kira guidance, she mapped the underground connections between trees. She discovered that the forest was even more complex than Earth forests. The fungi here did not just transport nutrients, they stored memories, chemical signatures of past events, droughts, fires, invasions. The forest remembered, and it warned future generations. The data they collected was extraordinary. It proved beyond doubt that this planet ecosystem was not just complex, it was intelligent in ways human science had never encountered. Dr. Rodriguez compiled everything into a comprehensive report. She included video recordings of Kira working with the dragons. She added testimony from Daniel about how the elves had managed the forest for millennia. She built a case that was impossible to ignore, but building a case and getting people to listen were two different things. The military commanders were growing impatient. They wanted to expand operations. They had quotas to meet, resources to extract, timelines to follow. When Dr. Rodriguez requested a meeting with Commander Helen Briggs, the head of the entire colony, she was given 15 minutes. Daniel accompanied Dr. Rodriguez to the meeting along with Peter and Amy. They brought their data on portable devices, ready to present everything they had learned. Commander Briggs was a tall woman in her 60s with iron gray hair and cold blue eyes. She had spent 40 years in the military, and she had no patience for what she called soft science. "You have 15 minutes, she said, not looking up from her own reports. "Make it count." Dr. Rodriguez launched into her presentation. She showed the videos of Kira and the dragons. She explained the forest intelligence. She outlined how cooperation with the native species could benefit the colony, far more than exploitation could. Commander Briggs watched with a blank expression. When the presentation ended, she leaned back in her chair. "Interesting," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "So you want me to halt all operations to protect some trees and make friends with a woman who lives in the woods with oversized lizards?" "They are not lizards," Peter Walsh said. "They are highly intelligent creatures with complex social structures." Commander Briggs waved her hand dismissively. "I do not care what they are, Dr. Rodriguez. What I care about is the fact that we have investors back on Earth expecting returns, have contracts to fulfill. We have a colony to build. Your research is nice, but it does not change our mission. Our mission was to establish sustainable presence on this planet," Daniel said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Sustainable, Commander, not destructive. What we are doing now will poison this world within a generation. Then we will move to another world, Commander." Briggs replied, "That is how colonization works. Mr. Carter, we use what we need and we move on. It has worked for humanity for centuries. On Earth maybe," Dr. Rodriguez said. "But Earth is dying, Commander. You know that I know that everyone knows that we have one planet left in our home system, and it is barely habitable. We cannot keep running to new worlds and destroying them. We have to learn to live sustainably, or we will go extinct." Commander Briggs stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "I appreciate your passion, Dr. Rodriguez, I really do. But I have my orders from Earth Central Command. Those orders are to establish mining operations to extract valuable minerals and to secure this planet for human settlement. Your elf friend and her dragons are obstacles to that mission. If they cooperate, fine. If they do not, we will remove them. Any questions? What if Earth Central Command saw our data?" Daniel asked. "What if they understood what we are destroying here?" "They would tell me the same thing. They always tell me." Commander Briggs said, "Results over philosophy. Profit over preservation. That is the reality of our universe." Dr. Rodriguez, "You can accept it or you can continue living in your idealistic fantasy, but it will not change anything. This meeting is over." They left the command center in silence. When they were far enough away, Peter Walsh slammed his fist against a wall. "She did not even look at the data," he said. "She did not care. She cares," Daniel said quietly. She just cares about the wrong things. What do we do now? Amy Chen asked. We go over her head. Dr. Rodriguez said. We send our data directly to Earth. We bypass the colonial command structure entirely. We make this public that could end your career. Daniel warned. I am 62 years old. Dr. Rodriguez replied. My career is almost over anyway. But this planet, this discovery, it could change everything. I am not going to let it die because some bureaucrat is too blind to see what we have here. Kira had been waiting for them outside the settlement. When they told her what happened, her expression did not change. So it comes to conflict after all, she said. Yet Daniel said we still have options. We can appeal to Earth directly. We can try to get support from other colonies. Other scientists? How long will that take? Kira asked. Months. Maybe Dr. Rodriguez admitted. The communication delay to Earth is significant, and then they would have to review our data, make a decision, send new orders. Months, Kira repeated. In months, your Commander Briggs will have destroyed half the forest. We do not have that kind of time. Then we need to buy time. Daniel said. We need to slow down the operation. Give Earth a chance to respond. How? Kira asked. Your commanders will not listen to reason. No, Dr. Rodriguez said, but they will listen to problems. What if the equipment kept breaking down? What if there were delays in the supply chain? What if the forest itself became difficult to navigate? You want to sabotage your own operation. Peter Walsh said, surprised. I want to save this planet, Dr. Rodriguez replied. If that means breaking a few rules, then so be it. Kira studied the scientist. With new respect, you would risk everything for this. I would, Dr. Rodriguez said. And I think I am not alone. She looked at Daniel, at Peter, at Amy. They all nodded. Then we work together, Kira said. But carefully. Your commanders must not know we are coordinating. If they suspect you are helping me, they will arrest you. We will be careful. Daniel promised over the next week. Subtle problems began to plague the colony operations. Mining equipment malfunctioned in strange ways. Computer systems crashed, losing days of survey data. Supply shipments were delayed when transport vehicles got lost in the forest despite having GPS. The military blamed it on the planet's harsh conditions, on equipment failures, on human error. They never suspected coordinated sabotage. Meanwhile, Dr. Rodriguez's team continued sending data to Earth. They used encrypted channels to avoid detection. They reached out to sympathetic scientists on other worlds, building a network of support. The response was slow, but encouraging. Many scientists were horrified by what was happening. Some began putting pressure on Earth. Central Command Kira used this time to reconnect with her people. She flew north on Ash, back with Ember following. She found the elf refugees in their mountain sanctuary. They were surviving, but barely. The high altitude made farming difficult and food was scarce. When Kira told them about the humans, about Daniel and the scientists, about the possibility of reclaiming their forest, the elders were skeptical. Humans cannot be trusted. Elder Theron said he was ancient, even by elf standards, nearly 800 years old. He had seen wars and betrayals and the slow death of the old world. These humans are different. Kira insisted they risk their lives to protect our homeworlds. Our easy, Elder Theron replied. Actions are what matter. Then let me show you. Kira said, I will bring one of them here. Let them see what we have lost. Let them understand what they are fighting for. Elder Theron considered this, finally nodding. Bring. You're human, he said. We will judge his heart. Kira returned to the colony and found Daniel working late in the science lab. She told him about her people, about their suffering, about the chance to build real trust. Daniel did not hesitate. When do we leave, he asked. Tomorrow, Kira replied. It is a long flight. Are you afraid of heights? Daniel smiled, his first real smile in weeks. I am afraid of many things, he said. Heights is not one of them. They left before dawn with Daniel riding on Ashback and Kira on Ember. The flight north took hours and Daniel was amazed by what he saw. The forest stretched endlessly below them. Rivers cut through the landscape like silver threads. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks covered in snow as they flew higher. The air grew thin and cold, but the beauty was overwhelming. "This is what Earth used to look like," Daniel said quietly. "Before we poisoned it. This is what Earth could look like again." Kira replied, "If humans learned to cherish instead of consume." When they reached the mountain sanctuary, the elves gathered to see the human visitor. Daniel felt their eyes on him, filled with suspicion and pain. He understood he was a representative of the species that had driven them from their homes. Elder Theron approached Daniel, looked at the ancient elf, and bowed deeply. "I am sorry," he said, "for what my people have done, for the suffering we have caused. Sorry does not rebuild homes." Elder Theron led Daniel through the mountain sanctuary, showing him the makeshift shelters carved into the rock, the small gardens struggling to grow in the thin soil, the children who looked too thin, their large eyes filled with a sadness. No child should carry Daniel. Saw families huddled together for warmth, saw elders who were too weak to stand, saw the quiet desperation of a people who had lost everything. This is what survival looks like when you have nowhere left to run. Elder Theron said, "We were a people of the forest, now we hide in stone and ice, we are dying slowly. Human not from violence, but from separation from what gives us life." Daniel felt the weight of guilt crushing down on him. These people had done nothing wrong. They had simply existed in a place humans wanted. Back on Earth, his ancestors had done the same thing to indigenous peoples over and over throughout history. And here in a new world, humanity was repeating the same terrible pattern. "I will fix this, Daniel," said, his voice shaking. "I do not know how, but I will find a way. One human cannot change the course of empires." Elder Theron replied, "Maybe not." Kira said, stepping forward, "But one human can start a movement. Daniel is not alone anymore. There are others, scientists who care, soldiers who question orders, even some commanders who are uncomfortable with what is happening. If we can reach them, if we can show them what is at stake, we might have a chance." Elder Theron looked at Kira, then at Daniel. Finally, he sighed. "You remind me of someone I knew long ago, a young elf who refused to accept defeat, who believed that hope was a choice, not a feeling. That elf was you, Kira. When you stayed behind, when everyone else fled, I thought you were foolish. Now I see you were brave." "I am not brave," Kira replied. "I am just stubborn, Elder." Theron smiled. "It is the same thing. Come, let me show you something." He led them to a cave deep in the mountain. Inside there were carvings on the walls, images of elves and dragons living together, images of forests that stretched across continents, images of cities built in harmony with nature, not in opposition to it. These were records of the ancient times before the wars, before the fall. "This is what we were." Elder Theron said, "This is what we could be again if we survive." Daniel stared at the carvings. "How long ago was this?" 10,000 years, Elder Theron replied. "We had everything. Knowledge, art, peace. Then we grew proud. We thought we could control nature instead of living with it. The dragons left us. The forests withered. Wars broke out over the remaining resources. It took us 5,000 years to learn humility, to rebuild our relationship with the world. Now humans threaten to destroy what we have spent. So long healing history repeating," Daniel said quietly. "But it does not have to. We can break the cycle. We can choose differently. Can you?" Elder Theron asked. "Can humans really choose wisdom over greed?" "I do not know," Daniel admitted. "But I have to try. Because if we do not change, if we keep destroying everything we touch, then we deserve to go extinct." There was a long silence. Then Elder Theron placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. "I will help you," he said. "Not because I trust all humans, but because I trust Kira, and she trusts you. That will have to be enough." "Thank you," Daniel said. "Do not thank me yet." Elder Theron replied, "The real battle is still ahead." They returned to the colony 3 days later. Daniel had spent that time learning about elf culture, about their history, about their connection to the land. He had also helped where he could, repairing shelters, hunting with some of the younger elves, sharing human medical knowledge that helped treat some of the sick children. By the time he left, the elves no longer looked at him with pure suspicion. Some even smiled at him. Back at the colony, Dr. Rodriguez had news. Earth Central Command had reviewed their data, and they were sending an inspector, and Admiral Patricia Thompson would arrive within 2 weeks to evaluate the situation. Commander Briggs was furious. She knew an inspection could undermine her authority, could lead to her operations being shut down. She is going to accelerate everything, Peter Walsh said when they met. In secret, she is going to try to do as much damage as possible before the inspector arrives. Then we accelerate our efforts too, Dr. Rodriguez said. But they were too late. The next morning, Commander Briggs announced a major operation she was sending, a full military unit into the deep forest to clear a path for new mining sites. The area she targeted was the heart of the ancient forest, the most sacred groves, the oldest trees, some over 5,000 years old. When Kira heard the news, she felt rage unlike anything she had felt since her village was destroyed. She called Ash and Ember. They came immediately, their own anger feeding off hers. They wanted to attack, to burn the human vehicles, to drive the soldiers away, but Kira stopped them. Yet she said, "If we attack now, we prove the commanders right. We prove that we are the threat they claim we are. We must find another way." What other way? Ember demanded. "They're going to destroy everything. Then we stop them without killing them," Kira replied. "We make them see what they are destroying. We force them to face the truth." "How?" Daniel asked. Kira smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Trust me," she said. The military convoy entered the forest at dawn. 20 vehicles carrying soldiers, engineers, and equipment. They had orders to clear a path 10 miles long and 500 feet wide. It would destroy thousands of trees, create a scar across the landscape that would take centuries to heal. The soldiers were nervous. They had heard stories about the elf woman and her dragons, but they had their orders. What they did not expect was to find the path blocked, not by violence but by presence. Every elf from the mountain sanctuary had come down during the night, hundreds of them standing in the path-linking arms, singing the old songs. Elder Theron stood at the front with Kira beside him. Ash and Ember perched on the trees behind them, their eyes glowing. The convoy stopped. The lead commander, a man named Captain Frank Torres, got out of his vehicle and approached with his weapon lowered but ready. "Move aside," he said. "This area has been marked for development, no elder." Theron replied calmly. Captain Torres frowned. "I have orders. I do not want to use force, but I will if necessary. Then you will have to kill us all." Elder Theron said, "Because we will not move. This forest is our home. You have taken everything else, you will not take this." The soldiers looked uncomfortable. They had signed up to explore new worlds, not to massacre unarmed civilians. Captain Torres radioed back to base. Commander Briggs ordered him to proceed to arrest the elves if necessary, to use force if they resisted. But Captain Torres hesitated. He looked at the elves, at the dragons, at Kira, who stood with quiet dignity. Something in him broke. "I cannot do this," he said into his radio. "These are people, Commander. Not obstacles, not threats. People. You have your orders, Captain." Commander Briggs' voice crackled. "Back orders can be wrong." Captain Torres replied, "I refuse to carry them out." There was a stunned silence across the radio channel. Then other voices joined in, other soldiers saying they would not follow orders that violated basic morality. The unity of the military began to crack. Commander Briggs arrived within the hour with reinforcements. But by then news of the standoff had spread. Dr. Rodriguez had made sure of it. She had sent footage to every scientist in the colony, to sympathetic contacts on Earth, to news networks that reached across human space. The whole universe was watching. When Commander Briggs saw the crowd of elves, the dragons, the soldiers who refused to fight, she realized she had lost. This was not a military problem anymore. It was a political one, and politics required different. "Weapons stand down," she ordered reluctantly. The elves did not celebrate yet. They knew this was not over, but it was a victory. A small one, but real. Admiral Thompson arrived 2 days later. She reviewed everything. The scientific data. The testimony from Dr. Rodriguez's team. The recordings of the standoff. She met with Kira and Elder Theron. She listened to their stories. Then she made her decision. Effective immediately, all destructive operations on this planet are suspended. She announced Earth Central. Command has reviewed the evidence and agrees that this world-unique ecosystem deserves protection. A new charter will be drafted, one that allows human presence but requires cooperation with native species. Commander Briggs, you are relieved of duty. The colony erupted in mixed reactions. Some celebrated, others protested. But the decision was final. Humanity would have to learn a new way or leave entirely. Over the following months, the relationship between humans and elves slowly improved. Not easily. Not without setbacks, but with genuine effort, elves returned from the mountains. Humans learned to live within the forest instead of against it. Dr. Rodriguez's team established the first formal communication protocols between the species. Daniel and Kira continued to work together, building bridges, planning a future where both peoples could thrive. One evening they stood at the edge of the cliff where they had first met. Ash and Ember lay nearby, content. The 3 moons rose over the valley. Do you think it will last? Daniel asked. The peace, I do not know, Kira replied. But we gave it a chance. That is more than most people can say. Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw her strength, her wisdom, her hope. Despite everything, she reminded him that life was worth fighting for, worth building toward. Without thinking, he reached out and took her hand. Stay with me, he said. Not just for tonight, for all the nights to come. Kira smiled. I was not planning on going anywhere.